Very well, thank you very much. It's only 1828,
Yeah. Thank you and good evening. Please be seated. Good evening, councillors. Firstly, I would like to warmly welcome Councillor Bryony Hartley, who was recently elected in the Barnoldswick by-election to her first meeting of the full council. We wish her every success in her new role. Members are advised of the recent passing of former Pendle councillor Ken Turner following a long battle with cancer. Councillor Turner served as a parish councillor for Barrowford from 2015 and as our Pendle Borough Councillor for 2026 until May 2021. Members are invited to stand for a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Whip.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I pay tribute to the late Ken Turner? He was a very individual councillor, one that spoke his mind and didn't necessarily toe his group's line. And I know that he was sympathetic to a lot of the things that we wanted to do on the council, but by the same token, he was unsympathetic to some of the things as well. I think he was a wonderful councillor. He had a previous life as a public person, if I can put it that way, elsewhere before he came to Pendle. And I think he really was a good councillor and one that was an asset to this council. So on behalf of my group, I would like to pay tribute.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put my group's condolences to the family and the members. Ken was a very experienced councillor from his previous life in other parts of the country. He did speak his mind. We don't get many people who do that in this day and age. He was a people's champion, and it's a very big loss and very sad news.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that I attended the funeral. Ken became quite a good friend to me, and I think he had a lot of people that actually didn't know him but respected him. And I'd like to say thank you for everybody for listening to me. Okay.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo the words of Councillor Whip. Ken was definitely an individual, but he was a community champion, and right until his final days he was working as a friend of Barrowford Library, where he put in a lot of work for his local community, and that really stood out. So condolences from our group across this family. Thank you.
Councillor Hamid.
Yeah, I was deeply saddened to the death of a good friend, not just a councillor, but a good friend as well. And I think he was somebody who always wanted what's best for the residents, and I think that stood out, and the passion he showed. And I think sometimes people you say he speaks action, but he never did. I think he was because he was so passionate and really cared about his local area and wanted the best for his residents. And recently, Ken was doing a lot of work, voluntary work in the community, particularly say in Barrowford, working with the library, and he used to ring me up occasionally and say, come on, get involved, and he was encouraging a lot of other people to contribute and give something back to society, which he was doing for most of his life. So he'd be sadly missed.
Okay. Any apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Kevin Slater. Unfortunately, he can't make it tonight, but he wishes everybody a very Merry Christmas.
Item 2, declaration of interest. Sorry.
Second as well. I'd just like to give apologies to Councillors Colleen and Butterworth as well, please.
Anyone? Councillor Wick?
Mr Mayor, should it become a subject of discussion, I'll declare an interest as a member of the joint ventures. There are things that could come up. I'm not sure that we're necessarily making a decision, but just to be clear.
Okay. Councillor Hanif?
Yeah, Chair, can I declare an interest in item 11? I've got a council dialogue and I've been told I need to declare an interest and leave the meeting at that time.
Councillor Church?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Whip has said, I declare an interest if it should come up in matters relating to film.
Councillor Mahmood?
Mr. Mayor, I want to declare the joint ventures as well, if anything pops up.
Councillor Ahmed?
Yeah, likewise, if any discussion around the joint ventures, yeah.
Minutes of the council?
Can I move them, Mr Mayor?
Yeah. All those in favour? Against? Item 4, announcements from the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got 3 announcements. First of all, in terms of the provisional financial settlement for Pendle Council, that was announced yesterday, and it isn't very good news for Pendle, I'm afraid. Earlier this year, Jonathan Hinder, the Principal MP for Pendle, was telling us that we will be able to cut the council tax because of the government's fair funding settlement. I'm afraid it's a pretty unfair funding settlement, and within it, the government are telling us to put council tax up by the maximum extent. And indeed, they're telling the county council and other authorities to put council tax up by the maximum. In terms of the funding that's coming from government, it's not far off what our officers, Curran unfortunately has been off with COVID and isn't with us tonight, which is watching on the live stream. But both Curran and Dean have been working assiduously on projecting what we might get, and we're not far off what we were expecting, but we weren't expecting that we'd be in a position to cut council tax. So I think you get some indication of the situation that we're in. We will be looking at the provisional settlement. I mean, I've spotted a possible error in the figures, and I'm sure that when Councillor David Coleman-Price sees them, he'll see all sorts of issues that we need to pick up. But we will be responding by the middle of January, I think it is, to the consultation, and if we do spot any errors, we'll be on them like a ton of bricks, especially if they're in our favour. The other issue that I can report, Mr Mayor, is that this afternoon I did receive a missive from Alison McGovern MP, and she is asking if this council would like to cancel next year's elections. Now, I've been very clear that I have no interest in cancelling democracy whatsoever. I think that the elections should continue and that people exercise their vote and either vote for us or vote against us, but vote they will. But it's not my decision, apparently. It's a matter for the full council. Yeah. So we are in the midst of organising a special meeting of the council in order to respond to the government's inquiry as to whether we'd like to cancel the elections or not by a date in January. And the proposed date of that special meeting, subject, Mr Mayor, to your concurrence, is Monday the 12th of January. So if you'd like to put that in your diaries, clearly if there is unanimity around the Chamber about not cancelling elections, it won't be a three-line whip for everybody to turn up, but if there is any contention, then people might want to turn up in order that we can vote to make sure that there is a vote for residents in May. The final thing that I want to mention, and I'm sorry if this is a bit esoteric, but as leader of the council, I'm sitting on the Pension Fund Committee for Lancashire and have been doing so this year. And I mean, it's one of those arcane institutions. Councillor Atkinson, with her other hat on, is the Vice Chair of the Pension Fund Committee. Usually, there's nothing really of great importance. I mean, it's a massive fund and obviously there's investments to be made, but councillors and other members on the committee don't necessarily have any excitement. That has not been the case in recent months because there is a very contentious issue as to the contribution rates that this council and all the other employee organisations will have to pay in next year and the 2 succeeding years after that. And if I tell you that the pension fund overall is funded to the tune of 135%, in other words, there's over a third more money in the fund that is needed for the liabilities. This is seriously big money which affects all the employers, the county council, this council, the unitary councils and the like. So I'm hoping that the Pension Fund Committee will make a decision. It's been deferred twice now, but it's coming back up in January. I'm hoping that the Pension Fund Committee will make a decision that will offset some of the downside that we've got with the government's unfair funding settlement and mean that we do not have to make damaging cuts, and the county council doesn't have to make damaging cuts as a consequence of either government underfunding or whatever you might like to look at. It's a very sensible way of bridging funding gaps. So I will continue to strive on behalf of this council, the other district councils in Lancashire, to try and ensure that we do end up with a contribution rate that allows us to set balanced budgets, obviously pay the pensions because it doesn't affect the employees or the pensioners themselves, and do that in such a way that swinging cuts across the county and perhaps in Pendle are not necessary. So those are the three things, Mr Mayor, and the final thing is obviously, you know, season's greetings to everybody, and no doubt, you know, we'll have a quick meeting because there's no on the agenda, is there?
Item 5, there's no question or notice from the committee leader. That's noted. Item 6, there's no questions or notes by the members to the leader, committee chairman or representatives on any outside bodies. So we go on to item 7, report by the leader on the work of the executive. It's enclosed. Any questions? Councillor Zeller?
Yes, I know about this one, I'm afraid. I'm still waiting for further clarification on the MTFP and its calculations. Obviously, the leaders mentioned one or two upsides in terms of pension rebates. We are banking on some of that. Each percentage cut is worth £83,000. So with a funding of 135%, that's rather good. So we'll see what happens with that one. But I've requested an update on the shortfall for the next 3 years or so, because whilst the stats point to 3.0 million, I think it actually should be 7.25 million, and our reserves are only 5 and a bit million. So I would like some clarification on that, and I've requested that from the Chief Exec and the Director of Resources.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy for the Director of Resources and the Chief Executive to reassure Councillor David Coleman-Price on this issue. As I mentioned at the Executive last night when a similar question was asked, the figures that we were looking at previously will of course be affected by the provisional settlement, and they will be reworked. I am confident that this administration will deliver a balanced budget both in the short term and for the remaining lifetime of this council, and I hope that the reduction in pension contribution will play a part in that, but it's not within our control. But I'm confident that we will get that balanced budget without making swinging cuts. And I will remind Councillor David Coleman-Price that when he was in the position of overseeing the finances of this council, he repeatedly told people that Pendle Council would be bankrupt in 3 years' time. And 3 years has come and gone, and here we are in a healthy financial condition. Here we are continuing to deliver frontline services, and here we are looking to the future with confidence and enthusiasm that we can ride the unfortunate unfair funding settlements from the government. So I appreciate Councillor David Coleman-Price's contribution, but what I would challenge him to do is not be quite as pessimistic as he always appears to be. Thank you.
Item 8, report of the Chair of the Overview Scrutiny Committee. The report is enclosed. Any questions? Do you want to add anything, Councillor Church?
Somebody would report only to add very briefly, as you'll see the note here, we have had a further meeting which was last week when we covered a great many minute matters, all of which you will all be hearing in due course. Thank you.
Any questions? No? Thank you. Item 9, adoption of Pendle Local Plan 4th edition, 2021 to 2040. Items enclosed. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This document represents an incredible amount of resources and time by this council in getting to this stage today. It delivers a document that reflects this council's priorities in the way that development will be managed going forward from its adoption. It demonstrates a 5-year housing land supply, ensuring the full weight of the policies within it will be applied to applications, a change from the current position today of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The plan directs development to sustainable locations with access to existing services and facilities. It sets out how climate change and biodiversity will be addressed, increasing local connectivity by sustainable transport, walking, cycling, and increasing climate change resilience, in new developments. It ensures It shows the adoptions of viable energy efficiency measures in new developments and environmental sustainability solutions. This plan protects open green spaces and designates sites of significant community importance as local green space, protecting them from development. Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt the local plan in accordance with the recommendations set out in the Inspector's report and its accompanying appendices. And that the statement of reasons as set out in Appendix 3 is agreed and sent to the Secretary of State as part of the notification of adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to second this proposal. In turn, I would like to thank our officers for all the hard work that they've done. And you've got to bear in mind that this has been like painting the Forth Bridge, where you spend 10 years doing it and then you start again. And I think it's at times been a thankless task for our officers to do that, but they've done excellent work. And I'd like to thank the councillors that have been involved with this and played a part in drawing up a document that emphasises development on brownfield sites and means that the greenfield sites that we all cherish are less at risk, and it helps meet our housing need in Pendle by doing it in a sensitive way, which hopefully would result in getting enough new housing, but at the same time ensuring that existing housing are used, and in conjunction with the strategy for empty houses, which was discussed at the executive last night, that we can go forward in a sustainable way. Mr. Mayor, I think there's a lot of members of the public who have helped draw this document up as well, and they have contributed enormously. In particular, no, I don't want to single anybody out, but I think members of the public have helped. They have made a great contribution in terms of the comments made, the support that they've given to aspects of this plan, and their championing of various areas which are dear to them and dear to us. And I think that collectively we have achieved a plan which has now been accepted with these modifications by a government inspector and will become the principal planning policy document for the next few years. Now, we still have the threat of the government's insistence on unrealistically high new housing numbers, and that's going to kick in inevitably. And they will insist that we start on a new local plan just as soon as ever this one is approved and accepted by the Secretary of State. But we can manage that. And of course, the other thing that's happening, we've got the national planning policy which is changing, and there's a framework there which will be perhaps less acceptable to people, but nevertheless we have to work within national policy. And the final piece of the jigsaw is the advent of local government reorganisation, because a new local plan in the future won't be based on the footprint of Pendle, but it will be based on whatever the unitary footprint is imposed upon us by government after the processes, the consultations next year. So I think we can be proud as a council, we can be proud of our officers, we can be proud of all the people who helped draw this document up and contributed by commenting on it, that we have got somewhere that is acceptable to the people in Pendle, the residents in Pendle, to a government inspector, which is pretty crucial, and is one that we can look forward to implementing, at least for the immediate future, with confidence that we've done our very, very best to balance out the needs of people to have homes, the needs of people to have industrial employment land, and at the same time done whatever we can to protect our tourist green spaces. So I'm delighted to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased to see this document in front of us. It feels like it's been a long time in the making, and it feels like the process has sort of set off and stalled. And a few years ago at part 2, when we had to sort of go back to the drawing board and write some of the reports, it felt like it might be a difficult exercise going forward. But to see things like Lenshire's listed as a local green space, I hope that some of the members of the public that have championed that cause will realise that actually it probably was the right thing to do, to go back to the drawing board and get those listings proper and in place for a good solid plan for as far into the future as we can make it before LGR and other NPPF modifications take over. So yeah, credit to where it's due to all of the officers that have taken a lot of time and effort into this document. But it's great to see it in front of us. It looks huge in print, and I sort of don't envy any of our planning officers having to sort of revisit that and go through to write our planning reports when we make the decisions in future. But yeah, well done to everyone concerned, and thank you for the public support.
So, local plans, they're complicated, they're labyrinthine, they're long processes, and Pendle Council has done very, very well to bring this plan forward so that we at least have positivity. And I would like to thank the officers for their hard work and for repeatedly giving an opportunity to the Climate Emergency Working Group. There are green measures throughout the plan as like a golden thread. We constantly came back in different consultations and put our 2 penneth in, and those sort of 2 penneth interjections were all noted. It was very gratifying indeed. It's wonderful for Colne that it has 23 local green spaces. It's marvellous. But all of this is set, as Councillor Whip alluded, in a really difficult environment that we are currently in. We've got the Minister in the Labour government, Stephen Reid, who is parodying Trump. I don't think he's even parodying him, saying build, baby, build. And with Angela Rayner's NPPF taking away the urban uplift, all that's done is taking away development from where it needs to be, where the infrastructure is in cities, where the jobs are, where the transport links are, and just spreading it randomly round the shires, not where houses need to be. I don't know whether you appreciate this, but this plan was done on the conservative housing methodology, which was quite complicated and nuanced. There was quite a lot of maths. I would venture the only person capable of doing the maths in this room will probably be my husband to do that. But this one, it's bludgeoned. All it is the number of houses you have now. I'm looking at the people on the ONS working group, and they're thinking, wait a minute, we've got loads of empty houses. They don't care. It's the number of houses you have now, and then a multiple, which obviously is not a sensible way to be. If you take Colne in 2011 had 28,000 people in it, and Colne now has 19,000 people in it. So, albeit in that time 800 houses have been knocked down in clearances, it doesn't make any sense. It has to be something a bit more complicated than that. Pendle Council has done its very best in this difficult landscape. We've got a new MPF coming, and there's more uncertainty. There's LGR, there's more uncertainty. But we, with the Conservative 2023 National Planning Policy Framework that this is based on, is the very best that we can do now for the next 3 years or so before the next plan comes forward. And it's hoped that the unitary that takes over this council will take the best bits of this plan. But don't be relaxed about it, because actually the housing numbers that the bigger area will have to fulfill are truly, truly terrifying. Really, really terrifying. there will be bad things happening. And when you consider that the CPRE say that in this country, on brownfield land alone, there's space for 1.4 million houses, and yet nearly all the housing that's coming forward is on greenfield land or the fake grey field land, that's a disgrace. And when you also realise that in this country there were 1.4 million unbuilt permissions. So what is this scrabble for land, this blaming of councils actually doing? It is land banking. It is land banking for developers. And the government is blaming the environment, it's blaming wildlife, it's blaming all kinds of councillors and so on, but actually it's not fair. Anyway, we're in the best position we can be in this very, very difficult environment, and that's all we can do tonight. We must pass this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to support the recommendation of the local plan. I think quite extensive consultation has taken place and we've got a quite active response from the residents, and I'd just like to thank the residents and the officers for all their hard work.
Councillor Whip, you want to say anything before we go to the vote? All those in favour? Against? Abstention? Carried. Item 10, independent review of the planning system.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You're very welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, Emma. Well, we do have some interesting stuff yet.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mr. Mayor, this second item on planning is one that was required by our external auditors, and it goes back 3 years, I think, when the external auditor made a recommendation that we looked at the planning stuff. I'm pleased that under the administration this year that we've been able to carry this out. We've got recommendations from the independent reviewers, and they are set out in the report here. And unfortunately, the external auditors set off on a bit of a misunderstanding, because they were suggesting that our planning processes could lead to costs being awarded against the council by us approving things, and then we'd have to pay costs on appeal. And clearly they got that the wrong way around, but you can never say that the external auditors are wrong, because of course they're always right. And as a consequence of their misunderstanding at the beginning, we've ended up having to do this work. The independent review has come up with a series of recommendations, and that is set out in the report. And I am going to propose, Mr. Mayor, that we do accept those recommendations, and that I'm just trying to find the right page now, and that we work through the consequences in the foreseeable future. So, without going into it much further, I think it was brought in on a bit of a misapprehension, but nevertheless we've done the work, and we are able to look the external auditors in the eye, say we've got the results of review, we've accepted them as a council, and that they can take it off the recommendations in future. So I move, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second what the leaders do. Can I just clarify to you, Mr. Mayor, with the leader, that in terms of the recommendations, he is not really straight away that there will be some work done by council officers and councillors cross-party to look at these recommendations before they're actually implemented at future days.
Indeed, yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the whole, I accept the report is quite decent. It's all mostly well-meaning. I do have a couple of concerns about the recommendations. On recommendation 2, attendance by a legal advisor or committee meetings. At the Colne Area Committee, we have Neil Watson, who is our usual officer, and I would argue that he is perfectly well versed, not necessarily as a legal advisor, but as a planning advisor, that he is, is qualified enough to support the committee to make that decision. So I would say that could probably be amended to say attendance by a legal advisor or planning expert, rather than just a legal advisor. And then recommendation 7, consider reviewing the planning policy around dormer extension applications, particularly in the Nelson area. I feel that is contrary to the other policies that this council holds, so I think that that's a difficult one to support, particularly for my group. So I would welcome either a removal of that one or an amendment to it. I'd offer, or I'd request a friendly amendment with the alteration of number 2 and removal of 7, and we would, as a group, happily support that.
Any more? Councillor Mahmood, you want to say?
Mr Mayor, I think Councillor Sutcliffe's wanting to
amendment.
A friendly amendment. Sure. Can I just respond to that? I think we've had an independent review and that we ought to accept these recommendations in their entirety. I think that satisfies the external auditor in what they want to see happening. And in terms of the detail of recommendation 7, which is the policies around dormers, that will be referred to the working group that Councillor Lulwick chairs and discussed, and we'll see how that transpires. It may be a difficult thing to do, but certainly some quarters of the council, or perhaps the majority of the council, think that it is a necessary thing to do, and we would be keen to see that implemented. In terms of recommendation 2, we did of course always used to have legal advisors at the area committees. They were not done away with, but they were not required to attend some years ago as an economy measure. I understand that fully. There were some of them at the time who thought that it was a retrograde step, so in a sense I do welcome the return of some legal expertise for the planning issues. But my overwhelming advice to the council is to accept these recommendations as they stand en bloc and ensure that the requirements of the external auditor are met, and then we can just draw a line under this. We will continue to do the work on the detail that needs to be agreed behind this. So you have my assurance that we will have that. We're not agreeing the detail here, we are agreeing the recommendations. So I do not accept this as a friendly amendment.
I was prepared to move a formal amendment, but actually I think that the fact that it has the word consider as the first thing, and that is considered very carefully for recommendation 7, I think that this needs to be sort of kicked about a little bit. I think it's a policy that is difficult to wrestle with, so I will rescind that and will welcome the report as is. I still think that it's important to say a legal advisor or planning expert that has the right. I think it might only be a small thing, but having a Howard or an Emma or whoever the officer is at the time feels too much. It feels a bit heavy-handed if the planning officer is well versed and equipped to do so. It feels like a waste of time and money for an officer for me, which we never want to see as councillors, do you?
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this is an external auditor's report which they kind of came to with their visit, I think, about a couple of years ago. So I think there's a sensible proposal by the leader. We take on board all the recommendations that have been set out by the independent review, and we review some of those proposals within there and that within the report, and then there could be like a subgroup, and then I can report back to the council in future.
Yeah. We've got a mover and seconder. All those in favour? Against? The abstention? That's carried. Item 11, fees and charges review for 2026-27 and budget setting on MPMF. Council Whip.
Thank you. I'll just allow Councillor Hanif to Mr Mayor, earlier on I referred to the unfair funding settlement from government, but our ambition, aspiration, call it what you will, to set a balanced budget. As part of that balanced budget setting, we are proposing a range of fees and charges that will help us bridge the gap between what we're spending and what we're bringing in as income one way or another. And the totality of the proposals before us, which are a series of smaller things, adds up to an increase in income of 139,320. Sorry, I've got my wrong glasses on. But within the report, Mr Mayor, there's just one item that I would like to vary, and that is garage rents. And this arose, Mr Mayor, because one of our residents in Colne emailed several of us and said, well, you're doing a 3-yearly review of garage rents, and you're actually proposing to put them up at less than the rate of inflation. So in real terms, the cost of the garages is coming down, and is that really what you want to do? So I got the officers to have a look at this, and I've consulted with group leaders across the council, and rather than the increase that's proposed, which is 10.6%, I'm proposing that all the fees and charges, apart from garages, be as set out in the report, but for garages, the increase be 20%. Now, 20% sounds a lot, but that means that a garage plot will cost a princely sum of £3 a week. So it sounds like a big percentage. It's not a lot of money, and given that we've got a great deal of demand for garage plots and garages, I cannot see that this is going to be any great hardship for anybody. Overall, Mr Mayor, it does help us get set that balanced budget. I think that we've tried to be reasonable. There's been a lot of discussion as to what we can do and what we can't do, and I hope there is agreement across the council chamber tonight to agree these. It helps us when we do get to the budget meeting in February. We'll have this under his belt, and it will be one thing that we can tick off and help have a sustainable financial future. So I move, as set out, but that garage rents and garage plots, the increase be 20% rather than the 10.6% in the report.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to second the recommendations that have been put forward, including the garage rents and plots. Mr Mayor, I think the budget working group has been meeting over the last couple of months, and there has been general consensus. We've had some detailed discussions and looked at different parts of the budget process, and there is that general consensus that we do approve that 5% right across the board increase in fees and charges. So happy to second that.
Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the leader on regards to 11A new pavement licence renewal. This is a new charge come in for a new policy that we just agreed last night at the executive. And on this here it says a fee for 2 years of £350. As my understanding, this would be set at £100. And could I just suggest a friendly amendment to change that to 100 from 350?
So do we have a seconder?
Mr. Mayor, I'm delighted that Councillor Lulwip has been looking at the small printing. She's of course quite correct that at the executive we did say that the fee would be £200. Currently it's £100 for a year, and the intention is that the pavement licence fees will be for a 2-year period. So to keep it in kilter, it would be £200 rather than £350. And I'm sorry, I didn't spot that one, so I'm grateful to Councillor Lulwip, and I do accept the amendment. Given that we've got a handful of pavement licences, it's going to make very little difference to the overall financial position of the council. But I think in terms of peace and harmony with our pavement licence applicants, that it will make a world of difference.
Any more speakers? Councillor David Corbyn-Price.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just a quick point. On the payment licensing, I hope of course we make more than £350 over the whole year. So we could be in for several £1,000s of money in that source. I think as well, the process that has gone through is obviously the budget working group looked at a sort of initial start point of a blanket inflationary increase. Some were able to be put a bit more, some had constraints on them either nationally or locally or whatever bodies do the fees, but others of course were 0%. And I think this has allowed us to then to revisit each of those to see what sort of price charging elasticity there is in order to be able to generate some more money. So with an extra 10,000 from the garage site, that puts us an extra 150,000 a year, which of course over the MTFP period will be £450,000 of benefit, which is good. So that's a good step in the right direction, and I support it.
Yeah.
I've just messaged my wife because I actually had a look 2 garages, and the leader, Councillor Wick, he said that it's going to go 20%. Well, the amount that you...
Not need to be careful. Should declare the interest. Declare the interest.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Councillor, you need to leave the chamber.
Sorry.
You need to leave the. Just need to leave the chamber.
Yep, we'll do. Sorry.
So that's a declaration of interest.
Before we go to the vote, Councillor, do you want to say anything?
Well, I'm anticipating what the council. I just realised it can come back, doesn't it? Right. There are we rent out garage plots where people have their own garages on them, and that's the £3 a week figure. For garages where the council has has the garage and we rent out the garage, that's about £9 a week. So it may have been that the £3 a week and the £9 a week were getting mixed up there. But in terms of those permanent garages, across the borough we've got 262, and the plots we've got 644. There is a huge demand for these, which is why the market will bear that increase over a 3-year period of such great amounts. So, Mr Mayor, can I thank Councillor Lawler Whip for highlighting the pavement licence fee issue, and grateful to members across the chamber in a degree of unanimity with the proposals we've got on the table tonight. Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Item 12. Notice of motions, care home closures. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry that some of our councillors are leaving. This word, Mr Mayor, and councillors and guests. This is really, this is in relation to the county council and their care home closures. We have one care home and one daycare centre which is affected in our borough. Now, I'd like this council to note that following the county council's consultation on the closure of care homes as part of their wider review of their in-house care services, Fairvale is on the initial closure list, together with 4 other care homes and 5 daycare centres, including the Byron View Daycare Centre in Cobham. It's been published that the county council, that's run by Reform, have now deferred their consultation decision that should have been taken in February. This, that the council should note, has been driven, apparently, it appears to me, it's been cut at any cost culture, putting money before the residents. And this council should condemn that the county council's administration for treating some of the most vulnerable people in our community is inhumane. And considering care homes as a market which is placing little or no value on care itself, and considering their capital receipts above the residents, this council should express particular concern for the effect this closure proposal will have on residents, their families, the care staff and the wider community. The fundamentally flawed basis of closure plans using out-of-date condition surveys. The dissent say it's about improving conditions when no funding has been earmarked for work. The tactics of gagging the staff and stifling protest and closing residents, which means when these residents are no longer with us, unfortunately, there is a space there available for somebody who is vulnerable and who requires it, is not able to move in because the county council has said you will not take out any new full-time cases. The council should endorse the leader's response strongly, opposing the closure of Fairvale, which is also linked to Byron View. The inadequacies of the evaluation framework, which proposes the guidance for the wider review, the underlying basis of the county council's strategy. When you look at it, it's weighted against condition of building, but everything that's the paper that's shown is out of date. When you go around, it looks in a good condition. So I'd like to know how they've come to that in their framework. It does not make sense. Additionally, this council should know that the chronic national underfunding of the adult social care, the cost shunting from health services, the care workforce crisis, together with the failure of successive governments to address these issues, have left the social care authorities at the heart of an impossible equation with inexorably, I can't say that properly, inexorably rising costs and a massive underfunding. I propose that this council should resolve that the chief executive, leader of the council and cabinet member for the adult social care at Lancashire County Council be informed of the terms of this resolution. The county council make a decision without further delay and agree to keep Fairvale open and reopen to residents. County councillors representing Pendle should be asked to oppose the closure of Fairfield, the adoption of the evaluation framework for the wider review, and support lifting the ban on new residents at the hall. The Prime Minister and Secretary of State be requested to address underfunding of social care as a matter of extreme urgency. And members of Parliament representing Pendle be requested to support this council's request for adequate government funding for adult social care. Because otherwise, Mr Mayor, it's unethical, it's immoral, and it's absolutely disgraceful. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Dorothy Lord, will you second that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure a lot of you are well aware of my 30-hour plus stay on a corridor at Blackburn. This non-admission into the care homes only adds to the problems of the bed state in our local hospital, not taking on any more residents in hospital, waiting to come out into a care home, and if it's Lancashire County Council run, it can't. So that does put pressure on the NHS. I don't think I have a lot more to say, because I think Councillor Bell has said quite a lot there, and well said. But I'll just finish by saying I am very disappointed that 2 of the Conservative councillors have left and couldn't be bothered to listen to this debate, which is really important in our area. So I will second this motion. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just picking up the last point. It is disappointing that there are only, 5 Conservative councillors remain in the council chamber, and that most of the representatives from Colne aren't here or have very obviously left immediately before the discussion on this item. Mr Mayor, I was listening very carefully to what Councillor Bell said.
No, Pendle. Councillors.
Sorry?
Councillor Whip, yeah, carry on.
I was listening very carefully to what Councillor Bell said, and what he has moved is slightly different to the motion as set out on the agenda paper, because it brings it up to date in the light of this week's announcement by Lancashire County Council, the Reform Administration at Lancashire County Council, that they are not indeed going to make a decision in February, but they are deferring that decision indefinitely. So, as I understand it, the first paragraph now reads, Council notes that following reform-run Lancashire County Council consultation on the closure of care homes as part of a wider review of the County Council's in-house care services, with Faverdale on the initial closure list, in brackets, together with 4 other care homes, 5-day centres, including Byron View at Colne, that reform are deferring a decision indefinitely. And then in the resolutions that the leader, etc., County Council be informed of the terms of this resolution. Secondly, that the County Council make a decision without further delay and agree to keep Faverdale open and reopen to new residents, and that I think the rest of it is probably as set out, but there may be textual change in the rest of it. But in essence, this is commenting on this week's announcement that they're not going to make a decision in February, which is an absolute disgrace. It is callous, cruel and cowardly. They could have announced this week that when it gets to February and the Cabinet meeting, that we're not going to close Favourdale, we're not going to close the other care homes. They're not doing that. They're kicking it off until after the local government elections in May. And that can only lead you to one conclusion, that they're going to press ahead with this. And they're going to close those care homes, they're going to kick those people out. Well, they are making the agony for the residents, the agony for the families, and the agony for the care staff so much worse. Because instead of getting a decision, and I sincerely hope that, bowing to public pressure, a decision would be to keep the care homes open. As I said at the outset of the meeting, we have put forward ways in which they can fund the deficits at County Hall without making any of these cuts whatsoever. And it wouldn't do any harm. That is not what they're doing. Kicking the can down the road, and they're making it so much more difficult that indefinite indecision is something that is so reprehensible. I've called for the Reform administration to resign over this, because the way that they've handled this, they made a monumental mistake back in October, and they are now compounding that mistake by mistake after mistake after mistake, and they are treating the most vulnerable people in our communities as pawns that are in effect dispensable. And I think that that is so indefensible that I can't see how the Reform county councillors can have any shame in being any part of those decisions. It's an utter travesty of what ought to be happening. And if you think about those elderly people worrying, their families worrying for many, many months, they've already worried all this time, and they should not have to cope with that. Not at all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't actually planning to speak on this evening, because I know that we all pretty much feel the same about this, and particularly the Colne councillors. We as soon as we heard any sort of inkling of any change with Favourdale, let alone a closure, we were sort of horrified and disgusted, and expected that we would be able to respond to consultations and engage with the process and fight our corner, as we rightly should and would, as councillors representing the people of Colne, who this service is so dear to. Colne Area Committee actually requested some information from Lancashire County Council so that we could make a proper response to the consultation that was taking place. We wrote to Lancashire County Council and asked them certain questions and asked for data, and things about the condition, how are you coming to these conclusions, what is the occupancy rate, all of these, the detail that we need to make a full and proper decision as a community, as the decision should be taken, rather than it being at the whim of a budget. Now, we didn't get a response before the end of the consultation. We couldn't make an informed response to the consultation process, and that is shameful. We should have been able to have a proper discussion before we could submit our response to that consultation, and we weren't able, we weren't empowered with that detail. And that is shameful. Now, I have to agree with Councillor Whip. The decision to defer this puts people in jeopardy, because the unknowing of any situation is always worse than knowing. Now, if Reform, who run the Lancashire County Council, had some backbone and they wanted to take decisions, they could. They can make the decision. If they really believe that the consultation comes back, if the data says Favourdale should be closed, I don't agree with that, but if the data said that, then they could have backbone and say, do you know what, the right thing to do financially, morally, for better care, whatever their argument is, whatever way they want to make it stack up, they should have some backbone and believe in that and support that decision. But they're not prepared to make a decision, because they know that they've got council elections coming up in May. They know that they want to field candidates and they want people's support. Well, I'm sorry, but they're very unlikely to get that in Colne when you've got this hanging over us. So I'm more than happy to support Councillors Andy Bell and Dorothy Lord in this motion, and I think it's the right thing to do. I'm just disappointed that we've not been able to respond properly and fully as Colne councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this series of events from Reform-led County Council speaks volumes to the moral fibre of Reform as a party. And people need to, in Reform and otherwise who may vote for them, really need to ask the question that if that party is willing to make decisions like this with regard to the most vulnerable people in our society, who have spent their entire lives in this country working to make a life, and suddenly when they expect to be supported by our local governments and have a decent quality of care at the end of the life that they can afford, that they should drop the ball and be forced into a private care home that's probably owned by the county council leader. You just have to ask the question, what is Reform willing to do to your family, who is less vulnerable than that, if they can support such a thing like this? So I will be supporting it.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you talk about people's life, the quality of care, the quality of life that they have, which also has impact on residents' families, including mental health and financial issues. We should be closing care homes. We should be investing in adult social care. We should be providing more quality services for adult social care, people who are in the most need. And it's a very bad decision that the County Council have taken in the first place, and then to defer it after the elections, which we know what the thinking is there, and it's been alluded to that it's most likely after the local election they will go ahead with shutting this places in the county, especially here in Faverdale. But we should be keeping Faverdale open, keeping it open for the residents to provide that quality service here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I can say is yes, I'm a Reform County Councillor. That's my other hat, and I've been at every public meeting regarding Faverdale. I've spoken at those public meetings. I have lobbied the leader, I have lobbied the deputy, and I have lobbied the cabinet member lead for this particular item. I can only say that I totally support Councillor Bell. That's all I can say.
Councillor Bell, back in now, please. Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to speak on this item, but I totally agree with all the previous speakers as to what they said. At a time when we actually need more care homes, it's absolutely shocking that the County Council are even considering closing this particular care home. I've had the pleasure of visiting Faverdale on a couple of occasions. Most recently I stood in for the Mayor during the summer, and the care and the love that the residents there receive is unbelievable. And the families feel really comfortable, really secure and safe that their loved ones, who are really vulnerable, are being looked after and cared for to the highest standard. And for this to be even brought forward by County Council has brought real stress and anxiety to the families, to the residents, and it's a real shame, and it would be an absolutely disgrace if this care home is closed. So we must keep fighting, and hopefully County Council will see some sense and not go ahead with whatever they're planning to do.
Councillor Bell, you want to wrap it up before we vote to the vote?
Just a couple of items. I'd like to say thank you to all those councillors that have stood up and supported this motion. But as an aside, I was reading an article this morning, which isn't our county, it's actually a Derby, where they have had to now approach the Prime Minister because Derby is currently run by Reform down there, but under the previous organisation that was running it, are closing 8 care homes. They were started en masse, and that's all fell through. So 8 care homes are now in limbo. And we don't want to be in that situation. We don't want to be in that situation where we're going to members of Parliament and saying, listen, we're closing all of ours, the same as what Derby's got. We've got the opportunity now to turn around and say, we're fighting for ours. Because that's what we're doing. We're fighting for our residents. They're our community. It could be Cravenside, it could be Fairfield. Next week it could be another one that's run by, there's only 21, I believe, care homes that are run by county, across the whole county. It's not a major amount of care homes that they're running. And the last thing we need to do is actually destroy people's lives. So I'd like to say thank you to all councillors who stood and supported this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, we've got mover and seconder. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item B, GP waiting times and neighbourhood health services. Councillor Chris Church.
Can I just say thank you very much?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I make no apologies for bringing this subject up yet again. It seems to be something that won't go away, and I do mean the problem. The poor state of GP waiting times. This has been highlighted nationally by recent research, but also by many sad stories in and around the borough. We're now told the number of patients having to wait longer than 14 days has risen by 50% from 19.7 million to 43 million since 2020. And I remind you that's on an island of a little over 70 million. Those waiting over 28 days have gone up by 2/3 and now stands at nearly 13 million. And all this goes without saying that the very worst woes of winter are yet to come. I think we can be fairly sure that they're on the way, even though we haven't got the worst of it just yet. I won't linger on the years of past government neglect that have left us of this shameful legacy, or indeed the current government that hasn't shown much sign of doing better, because we've all seen it with our own eyes. If I may briefly summarise the formal proposals. We must endorse the principle that Pendle residents should not have to wait more than 7 days to see a GP. We must write to the Secretary of State for Health to underline our position on this matter and ask Pendle's MP to support our call for a major recruitment and retention drive to deliver the number of extra GPs to turn that 7-day target into a reality. We should ask that the Pendle Health and Wellbeing Board provide a report on GP waiting times in the borough, and that we survey the GPs themselves for their own insight into the pressures that they and their patients face because of the demand on the service. Coming to Barnoldswick itself, as I must inevitably do, we must reaffirm our existing demand for a proper health centre and request the Executive to pursue this aim with all relevant parties. I defer to my new colleague to, as seconder, to make any further points, but meantime I move.
Thank you. Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reflect on the points brought forward by my colleague. I know that it is an issue of a lot of our residents all over the borough, and so I'm very happy to second this. Thank you.
Any more, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just refer to a new one on me anyway, where I did manage to escape from the corridor I was told that I would have this endoscopy, and I had the endoscopy, and the endoscopy nurse said, ring your doctor when you get home and make an appointment. That was very confusing in itself in the meantime, that backwards and forwards. But eventually somebody texted me from the GP surgery to say, your doctor will ring you. Oh, well, that's all right. That was a gap from that text to when the phone call is coming, which is on the 21st of December, 15 days. 15 days to wait. You know, that's like having an appointment with your GP, etc. Obviously, it's a telephone call. But a 15-day wait, and it may not happen, I don't know.
Councillor Mahmood.
You support the motion in support of having more access to GP services and the neighbourhood health services. I think one of the greatest problems is that GP services since COVID have not opened up properly, if you will. We need more of those traditional GPs, and we need those local GPs who understand the local dynamics and the needs of the local people. I think what's been happening over the last couple of years, probably at a faster pace since 2010, is you got the private health sector. You know, some of these private companies or private individuals or private, like American kind of companies coming in, buying up these GP services or GP practices, and then they provide you with the local doctors, but then they're trying to save as much money as possible, but also make a massive profit at the expense of the patient. And I think there should be a greater look at this by the government about what's actually happening, because if we give it another decade, I think you're probably talking about an American kind of style health lobby which will influence decision making at a very top level in Parliament, which will have a massive effect on the local people and the patients that need it most. And it could end up that the patients can't afford to pay for their services in the long run. They might get free services at the point of entry, but anything that needs anything additional that's needed may not happen, and I think that needs to be looked at. I know it's not part of this motion, but that's a serious concern.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We talk about the health system, we talk about GPs, and I'd like to thank Councillors Church and Harley for bringing this rather well-made, well-worded motion before us. We can't control anything around national policy, but one thing we can do through these motions is make the voice of Pendle heard and do what we can to help our residents' voices and concerns be heard. One of the more harrowing things that I've ever heard in this chamber is Councillor Lord's description of her many hours in a corridor in Blackburn. And she made a very well-made point earlier this evening in relation to Favourdale. And that point was that, of course, discharges from hospitals cannot function properly without a functioning social care system. And social care and primary care are so inextricably linked that we have to see them together. This is a common problem across all residents in Pendle, and I know because residents in Barrowford and the villages frequently tell me that they too are having terrible problems getting doctor's appointments quickly, and it is a lamentable, sad situation that we are allowing population to outgrow infrastructure, fundamental infrastructure in this country. We do need a root and branch reform and consideration of social care and healthcare, primary healthcare together. And we need to face up to the fact that if we need to pay more for such healthcare system as we want, which we should be aspiring to a first world healthcare system, which can offer citizens the best quality of healthcare provision that they can get, then we have to face up to those realities. And sadly, it seems that successive governments in London have failed to grasp that nettle for various reasons. However, it leaves us, as residents in Pendle, facing a sad situation. I, as I say, do support the recommendations. I thank councillors for bringing this motion to the Chamber, and I hope that our voice can be heard and that some good may come out of it for the residents of Pendle.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's nice to hear that we're actually hearing other voices raise this issue. I raised this issue quite a few months ago when I first came to this chamber. We keep seeing in the news and local media of, if you need to go to the hospital, please don't, there's an 18-hour wait, there's 24-hour, and that's our Blackburn Royal that's telling us this. We only have the one hospital that we can attend, which covers Blackburn, Burnley, Highburn, ourselves. Surely, I was probably safe because Chorley's got a hospital, but it's not A&E. So it's a rather large area that they've got to cover. We had this issue last year where they were saying they were waiting on corridors, they were waiting days, not hours, but days and weeks. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. Even during the summer, you could see the same message being sent out, please don't turn up if you can help it. But the problem is, if you can't get a doctor's appointment, the place you're going to go is to the hospital. Because you might be 10 days with absolutely agonising pain, whichever way it may be. But if you can't get a doctor's appointment, which may be early intervention, that would ease off then when somebody has an emergency to go to Blackburn. Instead of sitting there on a corridor for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. So I would completely back this motion that this chamber has recognised it, and we do say it needs adjusting the recognition.
Yeah, we've had this a similar motion before, but that's a good thing that it keeps coming back here, because there is a real issue, which is why the residents keep raising the same concerns with us. And I think we can all share personal experience, or we've heard from family members the experiences they've had. And someone who regularly accesses the health services, it is really, really difficult to get appointments. And I agree with the point you've made in terms of people having to go to the hospital. I've had to go there myself, and sometimes they've said, why are you here? It's because sometimes you don't have a choice and you can't get through to the GP and get an appointment. And you also made the point about early intervention, which is a very, very valid point, because some of the serious illnesses could possibly be prevented if there was early intervention. People could get access to a GP at a far earlier stage than what we're currently experiencing. There is a huge problem. I don't claim to be an expert on the NHS, but I think it is a really complex issue. It's not just the NHS, I think it's the integrated care boards. I think they share some responsibility. I know it's not mentioned within the motion, but I don't want to move an amendment. I fully support the motion, but I think there is a really complex issue, and there's various organisations who share some responsibility to make sure we see some improvement. On a negative, I personally can't see that in the short term. I think it's a huge problem, which I think only with government intervention we'll see some changes.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to support support this motion, and thank you for bringing it. I just want to speak recently. This isn't the case all over the country. We have a little Rose in June Canal, which is more in Warwickshire. So we have an address in Warwickshire. My wife on Monday is still registered down in Warwickshire, down in Southwood, which is a little town, just over 8,000 people, residents. They have 2 doctors' surgery. She rang them Monday and she said she had a problem, and she said, come down this afternoon. She drove 3 hours and she saw a doctor straight away. So it's not all of the country. I think maybe we could send our GPs down to Southwood just to say that they've ranked in the top 10 GP surgeries in the country. If they can do it for a little village of 8,000 people and have 2 surgeries, then what's going wrong in Pendle? Thank you.
Councillor Church, you want to say anything before we go to the vote?
No, thank you. Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Any abstention? Thank you. Item C, cost of living crisis, energy costs and council tax. Councillor David Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you've just said, this is about the cost of living crisis, about the impact of council tax and energy costs as well. Because what we are finding is that not just poorer households, but middle income households are really suffering with the cost of living crisis, and the government's actions through the budget that they just passed are making things worse. In terms of council tax, mentioned earlier on about the unfair funding settlement and their expectation that this council and every other council in the country will put council tax up to the maximum amount. And that's just a backdoor taxation. It's a way for the government to put the blame onto other people rather than themselves. And that's particularly unfortunate because council tax is very regressive and it hits the poorer people harder than those more able to afford it. The second bit of this motion talks about the cost shunting from the county council. So we have a position which I've reported to the council before where the estimates are that over £500,000 of costs will fall on Pendle Council as a consequence of the county council cost shunting the waste transfer onto the district council rather than funding that themselves. And if you look at the county council's budget consultation, you'll see there are other references to making district councils pay for things rather than the county council pay for them. No benefit whatsoever to council taxpayers because the costs are just shunting from one body to another body, but perhaps the county council is better able to afford some of those issues. The resolution that I'm asking the council to pass tonight is that we do ask the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Energy, to uncouple energy costs from global gas prices and allow cheap renewable supplies to bring down household bills. That is something that, if they did that, you could make a significant dent in the cost of household fuel bills. And at a stroke, we could get renewable energies actually generating electric at a much lower cost than otherwise would be the case. We want the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer to urgently consider alternatives to the council tax. Jonathan Hinder, our MP, has been articulating that in Parliament and elsewhere in recent months. Well, let's put the money where the mouth is, because there's no indication that I can see that Keir Starmer has any intention of replacing unfair council tax with better ways of raising money, but rather they just believe in jacking up the council tax and making people pay more. We asked the Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government to fully fund new burdens. Bit of a controversial issue, but we've got food waste collections which legally we have to bring in from the 1st of April. That's going to cost us an arm and a leg, and the Provisional Local Government Act mentioned earlier on doesn't give us the money to do that. We're going to have to find at least part of the cost of that, and that's going to take some management in order to be able to live within our means. The fourth part of the resolution is repeating our request to Stephen Atkinson, the Reform leader of Lancashire County Council, that we would like to meet him to discuss these issues. We have asked for this over many, many months, and we get a resounding silence. And finally, that we ask Pendle's Members of Parliament, plural, to support the above requests on behalf of the residents that they represent. The cost of living is something that is out of control at the moment. As a council, we can do what we can, but if we intend providing services, then we have to pay the funds and raise the funds in order to make those work. And I move.
Councillor Land.
The last part was that Pendle's Members of Parliament be asked to support the above requests on behalf of the residents that they represent. I think it's unfair how reprehensible that higher bodies can just shunt these costs downwards until they reach us, so that we have no choice in having to put extra burdens on our residents, and then we get the blame for this totally, that residents think that we're doing this to win because the local councils want to do these things, which is not at all true. And these hidden costs that we have to bear, that then again put these burdens on our residents. I'd like to support this motion and look for more fair funding for our local councils. Thank you.
Do you any more speakers? Councillor Mood.
I'm happy to support the motion. I think cost of living crisis is a massive issue. As mentioned, utility bills is lacking mortgage. Council tax itself is lacking mortgage, on top of your normal mortgage figure, and the pressures keep rising, the food prices keep rising, and we need the government's intervention to help us with this support measure.
Thank you. We've got a mover sector. All those in favour? Against? Any abstention? Thank you. Item D, Inaccessible Nelson under M65, Councillor David Hartley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Inaccessible Nelson. Electricity, gas, County Council roadworks around Nelson, making it impossible for people to come and visit at Christmas time. I know when we was a kid, we used to look into the Aldale Centre and spending time at Christmas as a special treat right from Barnolds looking to Nelson. But the Nelson Town Centre has been cut off. And we asked the council to note, and the Chief Executive to contact Lancashire County Council requesting that they implement improvement. And it brings me back to a Carlsberg advert when British Telecom dug the road up, and then along came the waterwork people, and then the gas people came, and then the telephone people came, and they were all working in the same hall, and it was in Carlsberg roadworks. And to top it off, a funeral director came along with a hearse and looked into that same hole. So I think possibly we should ask Lancashire County Council to just go back and look at that advert for Carlsberg and just get everything together and get all the utilities to make Nelson accessible, because it's a great place to be and a great place to shop. I really enjoyed it as a kid. And also the flooding on the M65. We've got biblical proportions of weather coming down recently. I think that's why there's very few of us left, because it's raining outside. And one, the roads are flooding, and they'll be going back on the M65. And two, there is that many roadworks in Nelson that it's going to take forever for everybody to find a way out. So yeah, I would just like to the council to know, that we request immediate improvement about the disruption and get Nelson open, so they can at least get some money for Christmas from the shops. They just coordinate everything. Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The M65, I'd like to say a few words about it. It's an absolute disgrace. The concrete barriers retain the water, there is very little lighting, and we are now playing with people's lives on the 65. And I would like this council to write to Lancashire County the highways and ask them to rethink the section that we have in Nelson and Cornwall, to rethink about taking away the barriers and putting up the lights. It's all right them saying it's going to cost a lot of money, but every accident on that motorway and surrounding areas costs far more than it would to put the situation into perspective. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favour of this, of Councillor Mahmood?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again. Happy to support the motion, and I think we talked about that maybe there should be more collaborative kind of working between the utility companies and highways and LCC, where they come together on a regular basis and plan and schedule their works in a way that has a minimal impact on the residents. Because some of these works started outside my workplace in the hospital back in June. And it seemed to work for about 50 yards. I mean, it's quite intensive, don't get me wrong, very intensive. But the government planned it better, more teams, started in June, and nobody knew who would win the works and where were they leading, kind of going to, until last month I found out they go to Fleet Street. So yeah, I think there needs to be more capital working, and in relation to the M65, this is an ongoing issue. We raised it previously here. There's going to be some kind of another serious fatality there that before something's done about it. The LCC seems to be just not taking much notice, just because we've done the works and it's like we've done these works and we're not ignoring, but we're not acknowledging that there is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with. And in a good old days, where you had the central reservation, the water did get kind of told and found a way out. And now the leaves keep regularly blocking the drains, and the water is standing, it's lacking the gate aquaplane. So it's going to be another serious accident, and something to do about it.
Councillor Whip.
Chairman, earlier today I was at a County Council Highways scrutiny meeting, and I raised the issue of the inaccessibility through all the roadworks. And the committee was advised that the County Council had done it deliberately, and that they'd actually had all the work going on at once. They said that the County Council work they had to do because the funding was running out, and they actually brought the gas and the electric in at the same time. So I think the businesses in Nelson who are rightly concerned about this can very legitimately go to Lancashire County Council and say, right, you've lost us thousands of pounds, pays out in compensation, because obviously the County Council didn't give 2 hoots about the impact that all that work happening all at once would have on those concerns.
Councillor Church.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I just want to recount one of the first things I saw when I moved to this area 5 years ago. I drove into Nelson, and the first thing I saw was a big red temporary road sign that said every road closed to every street closed to motor vehicles. I did not know at the time that was the name of the street. In supporting this motion, I do think nowadays we could almost take that literally.
Thank you. All those in favour of this motion? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. My season's greetings to you all. Happy New Year. Hope you have a good time with your loved ones. Thank you very much.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please do so. His worship about Kendall, Councillor Mohammed Ahmed.